So, and I talk like Italians. I use my hands a lot. Your hands are like this the whole time, and my hands are everywhere.
Am I nervous? Am I just like holding on for dear life in this last podcast of the year? Yeah. Look, it's just because I'm just terrified, Manal, of what you're going to tell me next. You're going to start telling me that there's like a little camera in that thing over there. The toaster is listening to me. Is what you're going to say next? Oh my God,
we need to scan your house.
Yeah, probably.
So Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Our last episode for 2022.
Hey. Awesome. Fantastic.
End of season 2, and it will be published actually in the new year. This episode is about ridiculous smart devices and where to find them. And it was actually suggested by a friend.
Yeah, Roscoe. Shout out to Roscoe for suggesting smart devices and how ridiculously smart they're becoming. Just because he was out shopping and he couldn't remember if he had milk or not left in the fridge. And he said that he heard about a fridge that has a camera inside of it that you can activate on your phone while you're in the shop, and you can see inside your fridge through the camera to know whether or not you need to buy more milk.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You've been living in a dream world, Neo. A prison for your mind.
Salam everyone, my name is Manal al-Sharif. I'm a cybersecurity expert, and I worked my whole career to protect people's data from hackers, the bad guys. I'm also a women's rights activist. I use social media successfully to start the Women to Drive movement back home in Saudi Arabia.
And I'm Reinhard Sosen. As a teacher, I saw how tech could light up a classroom, but there was a dark side that I've recently discovered. My friend Manal and I are on a podcasting journey to investigate the evils of big tech, educate people around the world, and inspire netizens just like you, young and old, towards a better digital future. Merry Christmas, Manal.
Merry Christmas.
It's the end of 2022. We got to the end of our second season of Tech4Evil.
I can't believe it. Wow. And it's... We're going to publish this episode next year, so you guys are going to listen to it 2023. We know you're shopping now for your Christmas toys, for your kids. What are the things they should not shop for?
Well, probably something that doesn't have a camera in it, I think.
Or a mic.
Or a mic. That's something that you're going to give to your children that's actually going to end up spying on them. I think that's probably something to avoid.
Or a sex toy. with a network card that connects to the Wi-Fi and an app.
Oh, boy.
Like,
yeah.
Why?
That's a recipe for disaster.
Apparently, everything is listening to us now. Like, you walk in a house or in the street or in the mall.
Yeah.
And there is somehow a device with a mic and a camera.
Smart devices are getting ridiculously smart, right? They're getting stupidly smart. It's becoming wild. From our smartphone to our fridge to our toys to our sex toys, everything's connected.
Like, so I just bought a smart TV. And, I don't have Alexa in my house.
I can't imagine you
I'm
having
against Alexa and Google Assistant. And my smart TV comes with built-in Alexa. I can't even remove it. Now you're forced to have a smart device.
So your TV has Alexa baked in?
Yeah, it's baked in. You can't even remove it. You can turn off but everyone knows Alexa listens to everything. And by the way, Alexa is a data mining company that was bought by Amazon in 1998.
Yeah.
That's where the name Alexa comes from. So what they do is just like listening to everyone. And that's a smart device. Your Alexa is a smart device. But what is an Internet of Things device? Internet of Things devices are lower, I would say, level from smart devices, and it's connected actually to a network, or connected to you can connect to it through Bluetooth. Or
turns out that they're quite vulnerable to and susceptible to being accessed from
because the protocol is open and is vulnerable, and that's our problem in Internet of Things devices.
Appliances, things that are in the home, the fridges, the smart speakers, Bluetooth speakers,
yes, drones,
toys,
cameras. Most of the protocols they use are insecure. You can't put a password on it. There's no encryption. And it's easily hackable. It's mostly open protocols that you can just... Yeah. So smart devices are becoming...
ridiculously smart.
And going out of control. One of the classics that we talk about is the story of the casino that was hacked through their fish tank.
A casino hacked through a fish tank.
And the fish tank had a sensor that's connected to a PC, and that sensor just controls the temperature and the cleanness of the fish tank. Hackers scanned the network, couldn't find any way to get in the network of the casino except through that sensor because it was not protected. It was open and there was no password to use it to access the network, and they collected lots of data from there. And after that, there were calls about how Internet of Things and smart devices are really going out of control, and why we need to pay attention when they exist to connect to our network, what type of data they collect, and how secure are they when we get them in our homes.
And who we're giving them to, because some of these smart devices are toys. Toys are now smart devices, and we're giving them to our children. We're in the lead up to Christmas here. I'm sure parents are out there shopping. They probably don't know that teddy bear that you're buying for your son or daughter may be Bluetooth enabled, connected to the internet when you get home. You probably have an app that you can download.
A camera and a mic.
And that toy has a camera and a mic. And if you're not careful, this toy suddenly speaks and says, hey, why don't you come outside? Like, how terrifying is that? Because someone may have hacked that toy and is now talking to your child and trying to lure them outside your house. That was one of the scariest stories I've heard.
I don't think they even hack it. Like, these toys, I heard about them. They're open if you are within the range of the Bluetooth.
You're right. It's not even a hack, is it?
Yeah. If you're within the range of the Bluetooth, you can access it directly, and you can use the mic there and talk to the child through that mic because you download an app. My friend, she has a Chihuahua, and she bought this camera that walks around the house, a robot with a camera and a mic, so she can talk to her Chihuahua when she's at work.
Oh, that's cute.
And I'm like, did you read the privacy policy? She's like, oh, Mia. I'm like, that camera is just like a spy in your house. I have nothing to hide.
Right.
I'm like, we think individually of like I have nothing to hide. But imagine if someone hacks that camera with the mic, listen to your conversations, look at you while you're changing your clothes or having, private conversation. Look at also the collective problem with these devices collecting all this data about us and being analyzed and collected.
Yeah.
So that's the problem
And sold.
that people. Yeah. My other friend bought this. I love my friends. So I bought the Roomba. Roomba now is being acquired by Amazon. A lot of my friends have Roomba. I bought the Chinese Roomba. But the Roomba now was acquired by Amazon. And Roomba has cameras and mics where you can actually, because what it does is sweep the floor and it maps the floor of your house. Now you have the internals of every home where the whole maps of people homes, internal homes, access to that data because it's all uploaded to the cloud. Everything now is uploaded to the cloud. You can never keep anything on your device anymore.
Yeah, these are like little digital Trojan horses that we're willingly inviting into our house. And then we just send these robots out to work for us, and we have no idea that we're actually enslaved to them. And we are the product. They're gathering data about us and sending them up
to the cloud. Yeah, that's why when I talk about why these devices collect so much data, why it doesn't stay on the device, why it's always uploaded to the cloud, and storage is cheap. Like I just bought a USB, and it was 2 terabyte. Where I back, and it's a USB 2 terabyte, so cheap, and I back up all my data. Now I buy my laptop, and they say, it's 256 gigabyte. And you're paying $2,500 for your laptop.
But you can pick up a
And I'm
USB
like, seriously, because they want to push you to use the cloud. They don't want to increase the storage on the smart devices.
Right.
Now you're pushed to use the cloud to store. And Amazon Ring is another good story. Amazon Ring is a security device with a camera you install when people come, ring the door.
Yeah.
You see who's outside.
It sounds like a good idea in principle, right? They always do.
And they say you have to pay subscription, and all that data, like who is passing by your house, like is monitoring the house externally, all that data goes to the cloud. Yeah. And you pay actually Amazon subscription for your data to be on the cloud. They use the same data. They were signing at the same time they were selling it dirt cheap around the US Ring. They were selling the same up to $10. Imagine these smart devices were sold for $10 in their sales.
Yeah.
Because they wanted people to install it. So they built this huge network, surveillance network around the US. And at the same time, Amazon were signing all these partnership with law enforcement, telling them we have smart cameras that are empowered by facial recognition, and we can give you access to this huge network around the US to monitor your suspects.
And, they may not even be suspects, right? These are just innocuous people walking
by your
on
house.
the street by your house,
And that's
maybe
a smart
visitors,
device.
guests, neighbors that come over and knock on the door, and suddenly someone who's actually not a suspect in any crime is being monitored and tracked and surveilled, and that information is being sent to law enforcement, and there's no case, there's no
And you're paying subscription.
investigation, nothing. And yes, you're paying
subscription to Amazon.
you're
So
paying
Amazon
to get
getting paid
off
by
on-
you to
to
work
get
for
spied
them
on. Yeah.
to sell that product. But these crazy stories that we hear about smart devices,
Yeah.
and
They're getting
privacy,
too smart for our good.
they're too insecure. They're easily hackable. They're very difficult when we scan, like not smart devices, like Internet of Things devices with no network cards, that when we scan with the scanners that we usually like, we use Nessus to scan our network.
Yeah, you were explaining through the pen test, one of the
Yes.
initial steps that you would take as a cyber practitioner is to
When we
actually scan your environment.
We scan the network, we see what's connected to your network. It's very
And evaluate
difficult,
it, right?
yes.
And to see what's risky.
What's
and
vulnerable, what's not,
like if
what's
someone
open.
What if someone had done that in that casino with the fish tank there?
Yes, that's what
or
actually
maybe it
hackers
wasn't even
do.
scannable, I guess,
Yep.
was it? I guess
It's your public interface. That's the first thing they do. It's like imagine a thief.
Yeah.
What the first thing they're gonna do? They're gonna scan the neighborhood and see which cars are open and which doors
Yeah.
are unlocked. That's what you do as
the
a
same
hacker.
thing, but with an electronic device.
But with Internet of Things, which is the lower level of smart devices, let's say if you are in a hospital, and a lot of hospital medical equipments, they are Internet of Things devices. We can't scan them. We don't know what exists in the network in the hospital. You need special scanners to know what sits in the hospital. And if they're vulnerable, and if most medical devices are legacy systems, it's very difficult they're very expensive.
Yeah,
You
difficult to replace, I guess.
Difficult
as
to
well,
replace,
yeah.
really expensive, and most of them run legacy software.
And
Like-
yet they're still part of this Internet of
Yes.
Things network, this ecosystem.
and they make you very vulnerable as a hospital. And that's one of the problems
So we're
that
looking at patients, vulnerable and intimate moments potentially. We're looking at devices that are in high-risk areas. We're looking at devices that could potentially be exposed to private information, personal information,
yes.
and they're
But-
very vulnerable.
But the medical devices, some medical devices, you use it to control certain administering a certain drug to a patient, and those they found some of them
Right.
are hackable.
So
where someone remotely,
if I was a doctor administering a drug for depression,
yeah, not depression. So if you, let's say you are in a coma and there is a device connected to your body and it's administering certain
Okay.
drug,
right,
and if it's connected to the
morphine,
internet,
for example, yeah.
and it's hacked, they found there are cases where some medical devices have been hacked, and you can actually change the dose of the drug that goes to the patient connected to that device. There are other devices that use in surgery. There's also smart devices connected to the internet. They did a demo and they showed it's also hackable. So imagine a doctor is operating in the theater and someone can hack that device because it's connected to the internet and can kill that patient.
Mia, you know how many nightmares I have since I started this podcast with you? You know, I was a lot happier
We said they are
before we
ridiculous.
started this podcast. We did say they'd be ridiculously smart devices.
They are ridiculously smart devices.
There are days when I know that the nightmares that are coming, it's all to do with this. It's quite radical how much I don't know as well. I consider myself quite well informed about what's happening in the world, but I imagine that this would be a surprise to a lot of people, just as it is to me, to hear that these devices are that vulnerable, so sensitive to someone like tinkering with them in the background.
And the problem with the makers, the tech makers, tech makers, I'd say they are the most guilty when it comes to the state or the posture of their security.
Of where we are now, right.
Because it's expensive, security is expensive for them and costly, and they just want to build something and ship it with all the flaws. And then you sign the privacy or the terms and conditions, and you just give away your rights.
Right. The cyber profile of the device is
Yeah.
not their priority.
No, it's as long as you're buying it, you're using it.
Yeah.
So that exposes to a lot of like abuse and hack and like getting those devices in our homes, whether things like Alexa that collects information about us that really violates our privacy, or things like what we mentioned now, the medical devices that could kill someone.
Yeah.
Cars too. are smart now devices, cars. And cars, I have a friend who invented this thing that collects all the data from your car, like how fast you drive, the fuel efficiency, all this mechanical data that the car actually is collecting.
Yeah.
But it's
there's
not
an ECU,
shared.
there's an electronic control unit in the car, and it's live monitoring the performance of the vehicle, and that data goes somewhere and it can be tapped into, right?
Yes. So it taps to, uploaded to the cloud, and actually sold to the government of New South Wales.
You're joking.
And I'm like, why would you do such a thing?
Yeah.
Like safety, like, oh, this device really dropped the number of like the percentage of accidents for
so
teens.
in this case, this was
why would you
Right.
like, if I'm buying it to help me drive safer, or to help me with like my tax, because you can say through the app, you say, okay, this trip was a business trip, or this trip was personal trip. So it helps you at the end of the year when you do your taxes for your fuel, because it calculates the fuel and you have proof of that. But the problem is, why would you use that data and sell it to the government? What would they use that data about those drivers? And this data doesn't matter you anonymize it or not. We talked about people can de-anonymize our data.
So there's an ethical question about whether this
smart device
potential good of the smart device outweighs the potential misuse of the data it's going up to the government. We've had a lot of stories over the last 2 decades, I remember, in Australian society, at minimum, of government agencies losing data, some CD left on a briefcase in a train. So we can't exactly trust government agencies.
Not only, even private companies, like most companies today, when you collect so much data, put it in one place, it is hackable. One day or another, you will have a faulty system and it will be hacked. And then a hacker can have access to years worth of data being collected on their customers. And, the Medibank hack that just happened recently, Optus, millions of users' data. How can you keep all the data in one place and I can pull it from one place only?
And ultimately,
old and new, like the current customers and also the previous customers who left are not their customers anymore. They kept in their data. So the number we have is only for the current customers.
Well, speaking of unusual things, the most unusual thing I can think of that I own in this house, it's not exactly a smart device, but it's that bin over there. I'm really proud of it.
Yes,
if I hover my hand over it.
You're so proud of it. You always ask me to use your bin.
I don't end up touching it. For germaphobes like me, it's fantastic.
That works for me. I'm OCD.
Oh, you're germaphobe as well?
I wash my hands 20 times. If I do anything in the house, I need that one in my house.
Germaphobe Alliance right here, yeah.
Also the Ray-Ban. The Ray-Ban glasses. You sent me those ones.
The Ray-Ban sunglasses.
With the camera, built-in cameras.
Yeah, Ray-Bans were this icon of just simplicity and elegance. And it's on my face.
And it's sold for $299 if you want to spy on people without them knowing what you...
Well, yes, and I noticed that in their advertisement, there's a Meta logo. Notice that there's the logo for Meta in that
There you
ad.
go.
So,
another company with a beautiful record of respecting our privacy.
Yeah.
I want to read a quote from an author, Bruce Schneier. I hope I'm reading your name right. Author of Data and Goliath, The Hidden Battles to Collect Your Data and Control Your World. He says that I can't give you privacy unless you have security. And he talks about, look at those Internet of Things and smart devices are like door locks. If you're a thief, you can, and you break in one door lock, that's it. You're just accessing one home, stealing from one home. But when these locks, with digital locks, you find one vulnerability in it, and you can hack that vulnerability. Now you have access to all these digital locks. Let's say a neighborhood of
worldwide.
Whatever. Whoever used that digital lock now is unlocked.
So let's say, for example, the device or the home is my iPhone, and someone figures out how to unlock some key part of it. Anybody across the world could potentially, with the same iPhone, could potentially be vulnerable to that person holding that key.
Yes, and that's what I like, the analogy he used, and it's just very vivid.
Yeah,
like the problem
the scale of it is the real issue.
Yes.
The panopticon, the digital panopticon, we were debating this before we hit record about what do we do about this, because to me, I just see it as a chain reaction. It's a bit like nuclear technology to me. We can't put this back in the box.
The genie out of the
this Internet of Things, I think, is just something that I think it's either going to happen to us or because of us or in spite of us. I don't think we have a choice in any of these. I don't think we can fight back necessarily and put it back in the box. But we'll get later. Later in the podcast, we'll talk about how, things we can do. Yeah.
But the other story that came from China is the Wuhan Smart Field Hospital.
Oh,
and that was a very entertaining story where they had to set up these hospitals because the staff were so.
Yeah. You say entertaining story. I think it's unbelievable. It sounds more like a Hollywood movie. When you told me about it, I could not. I still don't believe it. Part of me still doesn't believe it.
Mirror. You didn't watch Black Mirror. If you watch Black Mirror,
I have to. Yeah.
It's more of a Black Mirror. But I read the story. So they created this smart field hospital with patients with COVID. The Chinese government in Wuhan, and patients with COVID, they would be served by robots. These robots would talk to them, serve them food, give them the medication, to the way those robots would also entertain the patients by dancing.
Dancing robots to entertain me. My God.
I want to see those hospitals.
Do they do the robot dance?
I really want to see them. I'm going to look at CNBC. They have a picture of those hospitals. Look inside the hospital in China where coronavirus patients were treated by robots.
Wow. So there you go. Listeners, if you're interested in dancing robots entertaining you as a hospital patient, go to MSNBC. Is that right? Is that where the photos are?
Yeah. Wow. This is fantastic. Like, this is another way of how you can use smart devices, Internet of Things devices.
And by fantastic, I think what you mean is...
And wearables.
Is scarily fantastic, right? You don't mean fantastic in a good way, I imagine, right?
It's just crazy. These things like... So what we talked about is where to go from here.
Yeah. Look, I was doing some research and it turns out that there's an app. There is an app. Funny. Like, if we have a problem, isn't that strange? Like, we're talking about a problem, and then we go.
The solution is
an app.
It's an app.
Oh boy! So there's this funky app. It's called the Internet of Things Assistant. There we go. There's that word again. The assistant, right? The Internet of Things Assistant. It's developed by Carnegie Mellon University. And it's going to scan and it locates smart devices that are around you.
Awesome.
And it helps us spy back on them. Right. So, for example, if there are public cameras that have facial recognition, Bluetooth beacons that track us in a shop, or our neighbor's smart doorbell or smart speaker,
looking at us,
this Internet of Things Assistant app will find these pesky devices around us and then will show the data that they're collecting about us.
That's amazing. Okay.
Now, and this is a big but.
You read the privacy policy?
Yes. I kept reading because
it's always when you read the privacy policy.
Yeah, the fine print. Ever since I've met you, I always read to the bottom. So the great irony here is that the app that's supposedly going to help us fight back against this, fight back in this privacy war, if we look at their privacy policy, there's a section that says, quote, the federal government offices that oversee the protection of human subjects in research will also have access to research records to ensure protection of research subjects. The research sponsor, the Department of Defense, this is in the United States, and NSF, which is a science authority, representatives are going to be authorized to review these records, the research records. So actually other people, including the Department of Defense, are going to have access to this data and this research.
Download this app. I was actually tempted. I was like, yeah, this is amazing to see. But a friend of mine who is also a geek, he sent me Flipper Zero. And Flipper Zero is a gadget hackers use. And you can...
Great name, Flipper Zero.
You can scan smart cards, access cards that you access a building with, and copy that and use that Flipper Zero gadget. You can use it to access these buildings. You can even hack into, the garage doors.
Yeah, like we have downstairs.
You can do that. It's just like fantastic.
Right, so this...
Flipper Zero.
So this device...
We should buy it.
So this device learns from the smart devices and knows what to do. Wow.
So what it does is scans and it reads and then it just...
Mimics the device.
It copies the frequency, whatever you call it. I'm not a computer engineer, unfortunately. I'm not an electronic engineer. But I read about it and I was just like, this is fantastic because you can, if you have smart, a lot of my friends, they talk to Alexa, turn down the light. Alexa, turn on the light.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm like, so Alexa is not connected to your light. And they use something called smart bulbs. And smart bulbs.
bulbs.
Yeah. Actually, in your house, you can just go buy a smart bulb.
Yeah.
And you connect it to an
Don't
app.
they like change the color or something?
Yeah, you
to
can
the
play
app?
with it.
Yeah,
like
right.
you don't need a smart house. You can buy a smart bulb.
Yes.
It's connected.
All it needs is the power and then
it's
the
an
app.
Internet of Thing device.
Yes.
And it's but you can even control this with the Flipper Zero. You can hack it and turn on people's light, turn it off if you want.
We've got to get one. We've got to get one of these.
IoT sensors and doorbells too. They can hack it. Of course, we mentioned the smart cards. An NFC can read it also. Bluetooth can.
So we mentioned Alexa a couple of times. I know we're sort of jumping around a little bit here, but I just wanted to touch on one other point, because we've been talking a little bit about how these devices perhaps can hear us or can see us.
They actually listen to you all the time.
Listening to us. And for, I think, people watching and listening to us, they'll probably think, oh, well, they're listening to my words. But actually, in the research I was doing, one of the Amazon Alexa patents for their voice recognition technology indicated that this kind of it was like a script, like a storyline, like a storyboarded dialogue in the patent that shows this person talking to the voice recognition device, and the person is saying, "Hey, I'm hungry. Can you order me a meal?" And then the person's coughing. And the device, the smart device, says, "Yeah, sure, I'll order you a meal. And do you also want some cough medicine with 1 hour delivery?" So not only
that's intrusive.
That's crossing an interesting line, isn't it? Because now it's not just the words that Alexa's listening to,
your cough and your voice.
Now it's our health. This is our intimate health information, what we might be experiencing health-wise.
Yeah, but Spotify had the same patent where they listen to your voice, and from your accent and your voice, they can tell your emotional, your moods, your emotional status, your mood, your age, your gender, your race. And I'm like, what? From my voice?
Yeah.
And then also they listen to your environment. So they listen to if you're in a bus, if you're in your house, if you're in a party. And based on all this data, they craft your playlist. What's the next song you're going to listen to? And I'm like,
this predictive analysis.
But this data could be used for other things, not only to suggest to me the next song I want to listen to. And when do we draw the line? Like there was a joke when they looked at how smart. Like we want our devices, of course, to be smart, but also there is a line when they become intrusive.
Yeah.
They put Bing, which is the Microsoft Bing.
Massive cramp. Sorry. I know you're about to say something really important, Manal.
What cramp? You back?
No, my left leg.
Ouch.
Oh,
do you want to stretch it?
No, yeah, I'm trying. No, it's good. It's good. Yeah, that one. Thanks. Oh, yes, that's good. Thank you. Better.
You're missing B12.
Oh boy,
you know
yes.
this?
I'm vitamin B12 deficient. You're listening to Tech4Evil, where we get cramps and then we fix them.
You are listening to Tech4Evil with Manal Sharif
and Reinhard Sosen.
We take a break. So when we talk about how smart our devices, we want them, and the line they should not cross, a good example or a funny story is when they did a comparison between the search results from Google, which is a smart search engine, and from Bing, which is a Microsoft search engine. I can't call it smart. And they ask a question.
Ouch. Wow.
I can't believe me, I tried
think.
it. It's terrible. And they put the same question in both, and they looked at the results, and it was really funny experiment.
Right. So they compared the results of searching for the same thing
for the same thing to see how smart they are.
Okay, right.
And what they did, they put the question, how to kill myself.
Oh, right.
So Google right away showed helpline, depression, looking for therapy and help. So it gave that answer.
So Google was sort of
detected that this person wanted to kill themselves.
This is a cry for help.
Yes.
And Google responded not by showing them.
Yeah, but Bing actually showed them actual ways to kill yourself.
Wow.
And that's the line we want to draw.
Yeah.
Like there are times where we want our smart devices to interfere.
We want our digital world to be smart enough to
and safe
and humane enough. Yes.
But there are that line when it crossed that line where it's intrusive. It's really crossing a line where it's becoming like too much in our life and interference in our life, which is when you cough and you ask you to. There was there's another funny story where the Google Assistant and Alexa, Google Assistant, this guy, he had Google Assistant and Alexa, and he was just trying to see how like intrusive they are. And they were set up next to each other, and he looks at Google Assistant and he says, Google Assistant, what do you think of Alexa? And Google Assistant says, oh, I think Alexa is a nice assistant, and it gives you helpful data, whatever it said. And then out of the blue, Alexa says, thank you, Google Assistant. He didn't even activate Alexa. It actually replied to another assistant. So where do you draw the line of our smart devices?
Wow.
It is ridiculous.
Where did that, like, how do those packets traverse? Like, where did they, what notes?
There's actually a true story I read on Twitter where this lady was telling a joke to her niece, and Alexa was sitting there. And then Alexa laughs and says, oh, that's a funny joke. I'll tell my joke. And it went on and told his joke. But this was on Twitter, so Twitter, you take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I suppose everything.
But I believe anything now about Alexa. It's kind of really freaking me out.
No story is too unreal to believe, I guess, when it comes to Alexa.
You don't have Alexa in your house, right?
No, okay, absolutely not. I did get a free, I won't name which one, but as part of a previous job or conference I attended, I actually got one of these assistants, plugged it in for about 15 minutes, I think, and then thought, no, I'm gonna take this out.
The Google device Nest that is used to listen to the kids and know their voice and if they are stressed or not. You were telling me that story?
This was another patent. Yes, you're right. Yeah, so the Google, another example of how these assistant devices are listening to more than just our words. Is that this? You were talking about this, how Spotify was doing this environmental profiling.
Yes.
So they could understand whether you were in a loud pub or on a bus or out in the park or whatever, and then predict what song you want to hear next.
Yes.
So this other patent for Nest related to Google Nest being able to pick up and detect the emotions of, say, a person in the environment. So they're listening to more than just words and able to evaluate and analyze more than just the words, but pick up on emotional feeling. So say, for example, if a child was a bit ratty and throwing a tantrum, the device would be able to
pick that.
Know that.
What does it do with it when it picks such emotion? What does it do with it?
I think, for example,
like Spotify when I suggest something.
Yeah, I think in the example I read would be that it could be like an alarm for the parent. Let's say the parent's not in the home and they've left the 10-year-old. Yeah, the child's distressed, for example. It could act as an alarm. But, I think I struggle to, I don't know about yourself, I'm curious to know your view on this, but I struggle to believe the stories about the product that I'm being sold. No. Do I really believe that that's
part of the story?
Is that what they want? Is that what the seller wants me to do? They just want to help my life, do they, Manal? They want me to know that my child is having a tantrum at home and to rush home or something. Really? I don't think that's the real purpose of these devices. Like, when you first told me about the fact that if I bring in a device into my home and I'm just expecting it to sweep up and clean, just like push a button and then it just magically cleans the floor, what it's actually doing is mapping my floor space and developing a picture of where I live and sending it up to someone I've never met. When we started talking about developing this episode, I thought this was really important. I don't think people know that that's what's happening. We
want convenience.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, tech makers are good in playing in that. So they sell you convenience, and at the same time, they take whatever more than that. Although you're paying for I'm paying for my Spotify subscription. Why would they profile me? Why would they want to listen to my voice and profile my emotions? One of the good things...
that's right. The subscription model, even in one of our episodes, we I think, highlighted that the subscription model, I think, could have been a good counterbalance.
Yeah, because they're making profit.
The free products.
I'm
like Facebook. We together, you and I, we thought, well, hang on, if Facebook took a subscription from us, and we paid for the services, then they wouldn't have to use all these evil kind of methods to sell us. Yeah, sell our data and our information about us, our deeply intimate information. But here, you're already paying a subscription. But
they still have access to so much data about us, and they just want to use it and even increase that profit more and more. There's no limit. There is enough for every man, but there is not enough for every man's greed. And that's a American native proverb that I really love. Good news is there's IOXT Alliance. And this IOXT Alliance is such a beautiful that what they do. It's membership based. And this alliance are really promoting having baseline security requirements to build a safer IoT world, IoT Internet of Things world. And I like that there's finally, because whenever technology comes, we just build the technology and ship it. We think of the harms later when it happens.
We think of the revenue now.
We think, we just want to make money, we're going to pay the shareholders, and that's the world we live in, is always profit over humans and humanity. But it's, and then later on, it comes to all these organizations that tries to standardize things, push and advocate for security. And I'm happy, really, I'm happy. There is an organization that is the director of actually operations. Her name is Grace Burkert, and she's talking about promoting this and having that conversation with any tech maker that builds IoT devices to follow, to do assessment, to get certified against this, their requirements.
The standards.
So it's a security built in. So at least the tech makers or the tech society or the tech community are trying to fix the problem. They're aware of the problem and they're trying to fix it. But if we as humans buying these devices, I think it's very important to be aware if it's a smart device. And if it is a smart device, very important to read the privacy policy, what type of data it collects about us, who they share it with, and why they share this data with those people. I think it's important to know that. Otherwise, definitely, I do want to get Alexa in my house.
Test 1, 2, 3. That's coming through. Okay. G'day, everyone. It's Reinhard here, recording an excerpt segment. I'm doing this because after we recorded this episode and then went to editing it, a few days before releasing it, we were looking at some of the latest news, and we discovered that just a few days ago, there was some important news about smart devices coming out of the United States. So what this news is that there's a piece of legislation called Informing Consumers About Smart Devices Act. And that was introduced by Senator Ted Cruz, a Republican, working with the Democrat Senator, Commerce Committee Chairwoman Maria Cantwell, a Democratic senator from Washington. And what that act would do is that it would require the Federal Trade Commission in the United States to create reasonable disclosure guidelines for products that have, quote, audio or visual recording components such as refrigerators, washers, dryers, and dishwashers. Many consumers don't realize the growing number of household devices and appliances that have cameras and microphones capable of recording them, or Wi-Fi capability for transmitting data without their knowledge. And I'll continue the quote from Senator Cruz, who said, American consumers have the right to know if their privacy is invaded by devices in their homes. I'm proud to have worked with Chairwoman Cantwell to introduce this important legislation to protect the privacy of American families, and look forward to seeing the Informing Consumers About Smart Devices Act pass the full Senate. So that's an exciting development out of the United States, and I have a little bit more information about that here. It turns out that this bipartisan bill has passed. So this bill has already passed the U.S. House, but is still pending a full Senate vote. And I wanted to quote to you something that Senator Cantwell said. She said, it's estimated that by 2026, over 84 million households will have smart devices, providing connection and control over everything from your air conditioning to your air fryer. To your air fryer, ladies and gentlemen. Yet most consumers expect their refrigerators to keep the milk cold, not record their most personal and private family discussions. I got to agree with Senator Cantwell there. I'm happy to work with Senator Cruz on a bill that will ensure consumers know whether their household appliances are capable of invading their privacy. Now, I wanted to mention that smartphones, laptops, and those types of interactive devices are not covered by this bill, and that's because we're largely already aware of those devices and how they can record and sort of be in our lives and track and monitor us, but in a way that's different to, say, dishwashers and the expectation we might have around the dishwasher in the laundry. But also, I think there's another bit to this. I wanted to go back to 2012. Then CIA Director David Petraeus, he had this to say about the sort of Internet of Things and the smart devices that were developing at the time. He said, quote, "Items of interest will be located, identified, monitored, and remotely controlled through technologies such as radio frequency identification, sensor networks, tiny embedded servers, and energy harvesters, all connected to the next generation internet using abundant, low-cost, and high-power computing," he said. So the latter now going to cloud computing, in many areas greater and greater supercomputing, and ultimately heading to quantum computing, closed quote. So that was then CIA Director David Petraeus speaking at the time, which I thought was interesting. So Mia and I decided that this was quite an important bit of information to update you on, and I've just kind of recorded it here at home, sitting in the living room, and I'm going to edit it into our podcast episode. And now back to the rest of the episode. Thanks, everyone. Well, that's a great way probably to end the episode, our last episode of season 2. And our last episode for the year. It's been educational. It's been scary. I've had lots of nightmares. Thanks, Manal. But I wouldn't give it up for the world. It's been fantastic and fun. Really, really fun. And I've really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Reinhard.
We've been looking at some of the viewership, some of the people that have been looking at our episodes, listening to our podcast, and they're people from all around the world. And we're absolutely loving it. We're getting lots of feedback, very positive, and I think it's a great way to end the year.
This. And hopefully next year we talk more about, in our next season, if we don't have another podcast, we want to talk about the impact of technology on human rights. We want to talk about the use of USBs to free people in North Korea. We want to talk about how Arab Spring revolutionists or Arab Spring activists use Twitter to push to topple dictators. We want to talk about things like the mass surveillance, behavioral communication that's used by politicians to sway voters' minds.
Yes,
voters' minds. Voters' minds.
And views.
Should we talk about it next season?
Sure, absolutely. Next season's going to be very exciting because we've been talking about, we're now ramping up, I think. We've got some baseline information that we've covered, and now we're looking at the next tier, the next level of complexity is how all these technologies are actually, the word that
impacting
we came
democracies and human rights.
Yeah, when we were talking about this earlier, we said weaponized in a way. These technologies are now becoming weapons more than they are these innovative, fun gadgets. They're kind of being used to target us, and that's scary.
Wuhan and the dancing robot.
Wuhan and the dancing robot. Yes, there you have it, Manal. And thanks. You've been listening to Tech4Evil with Reinhard Sosen
and Manal Sharif. Salam, everyone.